Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Studio 78 podcast. I am your host, Nache from NacheSnow.com. Welcome, my friends. All right, so I have another amazing guest on this week, Miss Gabriella Layne. Can't wait to introduce her to you guys. Of course, for the show notes for this page, you can head on over to NacheSnow.com/167. We do mention a lot of tools and books and all kind of things in this episode. I have linked all the things over there. Again, it is NacheSnow.com/167. While over there, you can visit my store where I have all kind of goodies like the Life Cleanse Journal. I also have my free Notion template over there. You can sign up for the newsletter. So all the things that you need are over on NacheSnow.com. So be sure to head on over there. Miss Gabriella Layne, she is actually going to be one of the presenters at Craftcation. And so as I was doing all the things, getting ready for my workshop, I was like reading, of course, all the bios of other people that were putting on workshops. And hers just really caught my eye because she is going to do one on create your content plan. And she's also on a think tank and a panel. And so I was just like, oh my goodness, I need to have her on here because now that we're starting to end the first quarter, I just want to make sure that we all have a good plan going forward to figure out how we are going to handle social media. And we talk a little bit about everything. Of course, I had to get into her story, which was an amazing journey. So it was just really fun hearing that. But we also talked about boosting your Instagram visibility and growing your following. We talk about what a social media manager does, and she really breaks down like when does it truly make sense to invest in a social media manager, and if you decide to one day or today, how to vet that social media manager. And then if you're not ready for a social media manager yet, she also talks about how you can build your own editorial calendar. And we talk about giving yourself some flexibility and some tips for just posting and holding yourself accountable. So I had a really, really good conversation with her about that. And then we end the episodes talking about her top social media platforms. And she also discusses how you can find like your own unique style when posting and the importance of that. So I had a lot of fun talking to her, and I can't wait to meet her in person next month. I'm super, super excited. Okay, so a few housekeeping things before I jump into this episode. We are winding down, my friends. I am soon going to put a close to season 10 of the Studio 78 podcast, only because I have family coming in town at the end of the month for my birthday. And then I'm also traveling a lot in the next couple of months. And so I just need to give myself just a little bit of a break. And then probably starting back in May, I will start the season back up again. But no worries, I'll have at least 1 or 2 episodes for you. So it'll either be next week or the week after where I'll end the season. And then, of course, during that 2 months, I'll be interviewing some amazing women for season 11. So don't worry. I'm going to try not to be gone too long. So you'll have some amazing women to be inspired by during the summertime. Okay. So if you love the Studio 78 podcast, please, my friends, head on over to Apple Podcasts, rate me 5 stars. It would be greatly appreciated. It really helps people find me. And if you leave a comment, even better. If you're on YouTube listening to this, please give me a thumbs up. And wherever you're listening, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, you name it, please hit that subscribe button. That also makes a really big difference. And then also when I do finally go on my break, when new episodes pop up, you will be alerted. Okay, so let's get into this week's episode. Hello, Gabby, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello.
Hello. So it's funny, I've already done like an intro on you, but I'll just say again, like I saw you on the presenters page, so everybody knows that You're also a presenter like me now, but people, I want you guys to know I'm kind of like a baby presenter. I'm doing like one little Notion workshop. Gabby's got create your content plan, social media think tank, and a panel on building an organic community. So you're going to be
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah, you know what's so funny was my first time presenting in person was last year at Craftcation.
Ah.
And I got 3 presentations last year, and one of them was supposed to be a panel, and the other panelists, like, something happened with all of them, and it ended up just being me. So I
Oh
think
my
it was, like, 5 minutes before, and they were like, "Oh, this presenter got COVID, this happened, so you're gonna have to go up by yourself." And I was like, "What?" And
God.
so I think after that, like, now I feel like, "Okay, like, I'm a baby presenter, but I got a boot camp, so I think I'll be okay."
No, but it's great because like I went through everybody's stuff and then yours just stood out to me because I was like, man, people have such a hard time creating like a content plan. I know I do. And they never stick to it. And I just know I feel like there is like a trick to it. But before we get into all of that, let's just chat a little bit about you. Can you tell like the listeners a little bit about like your background?
Yeah, of course. So, my name is Gabby. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York, but I currently live in Long Beach, California. And I always say that I feel like I just have been like showing my age. I've been a part of this social media marketing world since its early beginnings. Like, I remember when Instagram first was released as an app, and I remember that I thought that it was just like a random app that you just use to filter your photos. I didn't realize that it was like, "Oh, you filter this photo and then you share it and other people could see it." And then people from my school started liking it. I was like, "Oh my god, what's happening?" So I feel like I've literally been here since the beginning. My aspiration was never to be in social media, it was actually to be a journalist,
Mm,
and I was coming up in my career during a time when businesses were just realizing, like, we can't keep ignoring social media, but we're not gonna pay someone to do it. So just make that lower level person on the team do it. And so that was pretty
mm,
much what was happening with all of my early jobs. And eventually it was just this thing is just natural to me. And I was able to merge that with my love of journalism because I do think
mm,
a lot of the principles of journalism work really well for social media. And years later, here I am with my own agency. Not the ultimate plot twist, not what I expected. I thought I was gonna be out here writing for Vogue and Essence, but you know what? I love this plot twist. I'm here for it.
How did you make the jump, right? What made you? Because a lot of people, they're working a 9 to 5 and they might decide to do something as a side hustle for a while, but they like still, and nothing is wrong with this,
Mhm.
folks. You've heard me say it like 9 to 5 with a
Mhm.
side hustle is good for some, running their own business is good for others. But when people do decide to make that jump, that's a big deal. You gotta pay your own
Uh-huh.
insurance. You gotta
Mhm.
you gotta
Yes.
be responsible for like how am I gonna pay my mortgage or my rent every so how did you make that decision and why did you make that decision?
Oh, it's so funny. So I feel like I was low key forced into this decision. So I was working as an account coordinator at a marketing agency based here in Long Beach, and I was there for I think about a year and a half. And at the time, I had my own magazine that I started when I was in grad school, and the whole
Mm,
purpose of it was to amplify like Black creatives in fashion
mm,
and amplifying Black creatives who are just not being represented in traditional media. And so my plan was to become an entrepreneur by blowing this magazine up and it being this whole thing. That was like my side hustle during my time at my last job. And I remember I had saw this pitch competition that Bumble and Arian Simone were having in Atlanta, and I was planning to go to pitch my magazine. And then that same week or the week before, my boss calls me into his office and I have to let you go because he was like downsizing the company. But he was like, but I think you're really good at social media. So how about you take the company managing and just have them as your first freelance clients. Like, I think that you should freelance. He pretty much told me, like, I think you should freelance. And here's the first
Mm.
clients, because the clients that I was working with in the agency were also his company. So he was like my double
Mm.
boss. And he was like, okay, like, just take these clients, just do their social media, and I'll pay you like a fourth of what I was paying you, but good luck. And I was like,
Right.
okay. So I freaked out and I was crying. And I initially felt, oh, he's just trying to be nice. Like, I don't know why this is happening. So I was scared, but I was forced into it and I had to figure it out. And I remember about maybe 2 years in, like, things just weren't building. And I went in to apply for a job and I got the job. And then something with my background check didn't come back. So I was all prepared in my mind to make this great salary.
Mm.
And then I found out like a couple of days before I was supposed to go in that it wasn't going to work out. And I was like, okay, God,
Like, why?
clearly you want me
What
to
is
do
going
this.
on?
Yes, it was like, God, you clearly. And then I started to get all spiritual. Like, I like just stopped and I was like, okay, like, what's going on? And I was like, I feel like this is what I'm supposed to do. So I'm just going to try. And it turned around shortly after that. So I definitely didn't choose this, at least not at the time. I wasn't ready for it yet, but it worked out. So I'm glad.
And what did that first year look like for you? Because of course he was gracious enough, I guess, to give you like your first companies to work for. But then how did you grow after that? After you realized, I'm just in it for myself, I got to figure this out. Like, how did
Yeah.
you market yourself and get more companies on board? What did that look like for
Yeah.
you?
So it's so interesting, right? Because I was on Upwork. I was on all the freelancing
Oh,
sites, like
mhm.
charging $25 an hour, just trying to get like little projects here and there. But that Bumble and Arian Simone pitch competition that I told you about, there happens to be a lot of business owners there, like business owners, all of them were women of color. And so I think I had ended up bidding for a project on Upwork, and the woman who I did the bid for happened to also have been at that pitch competition.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so I ended up doing some work with her for a while, and she had her parents had like multiple companies and they needed help too. So pretty much that kind of really helped me to start establishing myself. I was still being severely underpaid and the work, no, I didn't have my own company. I was definitely a freelancer at the time, but it just gave me something to work with. And then I remember after a year of just keep working with these people and getting paid $25 per hour, I was like, I need to start doing this for myself. I need to have a social media presence and I need people to know who I am so they want to hire me. So I remember I just sat down and I went on Pinterest and I picked out colors and I went on Canva, I made a logo, and then I just started posting like crazy and it actually started working. And I was like, wow, like it was just so full circle. So it's like I always say, like, I really believe in social media because I built my business off of social media. And
Mm.
so I know that it has the power because as soon as I made that decision to take social media seriously, like I was able to actually charge premium rates and people would come to me excited. I want to work with you because I see what you're doing for yourself. So I need you to do it for me too.
Mm. People are probably listening right now and they're probably like, Gabby, or calling you like your full government name, like Gabriella. We hear you, but it's so hard. Like, it's so noisy out there. Like, how do you get people to pay attention to your content? And so for you, and I do realize, I'm not sure, because what year was this?
When the pitch competition happened,
Yeah.
this had to be like 2017, 18.
Okay. So roughly 5-ish years ago. So I realized the social media 5 years ago is very different than it is now. I don't know, very different. You can like maybe talk about that. But it's
Mm-hmm.
noisier, I would assume, right? More people are on. But for you, at least then, like, how did you get people to pay attention to you? Because I feel like in like 17, 18, Instagram had become a thing and it was already a little bit noisy out there where there was a lot
Yeah.
of people trying to showcase their businesses. So, like, how did you get people to pay attention?
Yeah, so It was interesting because I was one of those ghost people who, like, had an account and never post on it, but it was always consuming, and so what I did when I first decided that I wanted to actually creating content for my business consistently was a lot of social listening, which essentially is just looking at the industry, not even just your direct competitors. So I wasn't looking at social media managers, but I was looking at business coaches and other companies who are trying to speak to business owners. And I was just looking at the type of content that they were creating. And I noticed, okay, infographics at that time, it was like infographic city. So if you had a little infographic and stuff like that, those were really performing well. And you could still do like very simple things. Like you could just post a picture of yourself that was really cute, simple time. So I just did some social listening and some market research, which those words sound scary, but it's literally look at what's happening in your space, look
Mm,
at what your people are paying attention to, and then find a way to connect that with what you're interested in. I feel like a lot of the time people are super selfish on social media, both as consumers and as creators. So I feel like as a consumer of content, all you care about is yourself. Like
mhm,
you're only going
mhm,
to care about a piece of content if you relate to it, if you're entertained by it, if it taught you something. But then sometimes as business owners, we're so focused on promoting and letting people know what we're selling that we're not serving. So I feel like it's like a middle point you have to find of this is
mm,
what my people care about and this is like how they can see themselves or get something from this content and this is what I care about and what I'm interested in or what my business represents. So let's find the middle between those two and create content from a place of community and engagement and conversation and not just like
mm.
posting a promotional graphic because you're having a sale. And I
Right.
think, yeah, I
People
think
are
because
like,
I
okay.
exactly. Like people don't like we're getting so much content all the time. Like why does this person care? Do they relate to you and do they see something in you and your brand or
Mm.
are you just really well versed on this one thing and you just always teach them something or are you funny and your memes are just hilarious and make them laugh? What is it? Because we all of our brands have something different to bring. So I think if we could figure out what that sweet spot is, then and relate that to what our communities care about, that's the key, I think, to social
Mm.
media.
And then another question people might have too is, what does a social media manager do? Right?
I love that question. That's such a great question. So I think with social media managers, it's definitely changed, right? Because once upon a time, a social media manager was the person who did it all, right? So they
Mm,
did everything from beginning to end. But I think that was a simpler time when it was just like,
mm,
it's more about the feed and how it looks and what cute pictures are we posting, right? But
mhm.
now that social media is honestly very comparable to the operations of probably like a magazine or like a media
Oh,
network, it's
interesting.
very
Mhm.
much more like that, right? So you have to have an editorial calendar, and then you got to do research, and then you have to create the content, and then you have to schedule the content, and then you got to respond to the comments. So some social media managers do it all from beginning to end. So they develop the strategy for you of this is who your audience is, this is what they're talking about online, here's the type of things you should be posting, and then they
Mm,
execute
mm,
that for you. But a lot more social media managers come to you wanting you to have a strategy and a plan and them just executing it.
mm, mm,
So it depends on the social media manager, but for the most part, what a social media manager should do is they should help you to plan out an editorial calendar of what you're going to be posting about for the month. They should be supporting in some capacity in creating that content, and then they should be making sure that it goes up successfully and that your comments are responded to and you're not leaving people on red.
mm.
That's what your social media manager should do.
No, this is good for people to know because I think initially people, especially when they first start their business, they're going to be their own social media manager. But then once they get to a certain level, there's no time for them to do all the things. And so
Mhm.
then it's okay, I need to invest in someone to assist me with this. But I don't think everybody knows like what that assist looks like. So I'm glad you like really
Mhm.
broke it down, right? Like
Yeah, for
how
sure.
a social media manager could help a company. How big do you think a company needs to be in order to hire a social media manager? You know?
That's such a good question. I would say that you should definitely be generating consistent revenue.
Mm.
And I would say that you should definitely at least be bringing in the mid four figures at minimum to be able to afford a social media manager, because you can find a
Mm.
social media manager in a range of prices. You could probably find someone for as low as like $500, and then it can go up from there. But you have to know what you're getting for that, right? Like, you're not going to be paying $500 and getting like the best of the best. You're going to be getting someone who's more junior, who's less experienced, who's probably going to be relying more on Canva and using stock content versus someone else who's going to be creating original stuff for you. So I would say at the very least, you should be in like the mid four figures range, and understand that the less you're paying, the more hand holding and support you're going to need from that person.
Mm.
But that's okay if that's within your budget. But I feel like you need to be producing enough revenue to cover your operation costs, to pay yourself, and then to have a social media manager.
And so that brings up a good point too, because what would you say? Okay, somebody's like, okay, Gabby, I hear you, and I think I'm there. Check, 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 check. What credentials should they look for? What skill set? Because like you mentioned, like a junior person might be using more Canva, like would an experienced person be using like Adobe Suite, for example? What kind of questions and what kind of credentials should people look for when they're looking for a high end, like really good social media manager?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would say is, I know a lot of people like to hire admin assistants as their social media managers. And as someone with a social media agency who has done that also, you first want to have someone with a very specialized set of skills, and this is their path and this is what they love to do, right? And they actually have a concerted investment and interest in it. And
Mm.
I feel like people don't think about that because they think social media is just this thing that I could do, but I just don't have time for it, to just have someone else do it. But the person has to care. Like, the person has to care and be invested and
Mm.
know what's happening in the social media ecosystem, and stay on top of the news and stay on top of updates. So the first thing is just like someone with the specialized skills. You also want to have someone who, depending on the type of content that your company creates, which is where the strategy comes in, has those skills. So if you're a company and you're more of like a lifestyle
Mm.
brand, and you don't really need that many graphics, but you need a lot of video and you need a lot of
Mm.
photos, and you want to have someone who has those skills. Like, either they're someone who's coming in and creating videos for you, or you have someone else coming in and they know how to edit videos, they know how to do all of that type of stuff, right?
Mm.
But if you're
Mm.
more of a
Mm.
company who needs graphics, maybe you're like a nonprofit or something like that, you want someone with graphic design skills. They don't have Canva is fine. I use Canva, but you don't want
Mm.
someone who's literally going to go into Canva and just press the first template and then just put your text
Right.
on it. You know, like,
Right.
you want, yeah, exactly. You
You
know
want
what I'm
someone
talking
who knows like the fonts and like all the things, right?
about.
Okay, this
Yeah,
color scheme works, like these elements work
exactly.
together. Okay.
Exactly. And you want to have someone who also is good at copywriting, because that's essential for social media, because captions are super important. And now with all the platforms, SEO is really important. So you want to know that this person knows how to not only write good captions, but understands SEO and how it works so that the captions have those keywords.
Mm.
Yeah, so I feel like those are the essential things that you want to make sure, just asking them, like, how long have you been doing this? What are your long-term goals? Because if they're kind of, I want to work in social media, this is what I want to do, then that's a good sign, right? Because they're invested in this field. They're trying to build their portfolio. It's like, I'm just an admin assistant, but I know how to do social media. Then that person's just gonna, they're just gonna do your social media. They're gonna
Right.
post, they're gonna make sure there's a post up, but are they really doing the research and the planning and the creativity, the creative work? So I think those are the important things to think about.
I think that's really good. And I guess really making sure you're looking at or ask that person to give you some examples of their work, right?
Totally,
The
yeah.
clients that they've worked
Mhm.
with. So you know if like their particular style works for your brand.
That's such a good point, because I feel I just realized this myself too, was like, I mean, I could manage social media for anyone, but when it's really impactful is when I feel aligned with the brand, right?
Mm.
Whether it be that I'm interested and invested in what they're doing, or I just have a general understanding of that landscape. So, for example, I recently started working with this client, and they're like an online education platform, and all their educational content is focused around like Black history and culture. And
Mm.
I'm very into that. So, like, when I have to create content for them, I'm like, oh, I could do this and that because I'm interested and I'm invested, versus like when I had a dentist as a client and I was like, I don't know. Like, I like don't care that much.
Right.
So
It's
I
just
think
like
that
it's
alignment
a
is
little
important.
bit harder to get creative with that type of
Yeah,
content.
but maybe there's a social media manager out there who's, "Hey, I love dental stuff, and maybe I thought I was gonna be a dentist, so this is perfect," you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to chat a little bit about editorial like content plan because
Mhm.
so there are some folks out there where they just heard everything you said and they're like, okay, I'm about to invest, right? But then some people are like, just got this business idea. I know what I want to do. It doesn't make sense for me to invest yet because I'm not making money or I'm only making $1,000 a month because this is my side hustle. And so, for you, like, what advice do you give folks like that when it comes to making an editorial calendar? What does that look like for you? You
Mhm.
know, like, what
Yeah.
should someone just starting out, like, how should they plan it and think through it and like execute it?
This is amazing. I love this question because I'm literally like right before we got on, I was writing a blog post for Planily about this exact question. So it's fresh in here. So so the first thing that I feel like is super underestimated is you want to have insights and you want to have data to look at. I
Mm,
always like to say that social media is the perfect balance between strategy and creativity. So, of course, you got to be creative and all of that, but you also need to know numbers. So if you already have a social media account, you want to look and see what is moving the needle.
mm,
What are the things that are performing well? What are getting people to engage in my content, to go to my site, so you can know what to make more of. And that's how your strategy and your content evolves and continues to get better.
mm,
So if
mm,
you do that, or if you don't have one yet, just look, like I said, look on your in your ecosystem, look at some of your competitors, look at other people's content you really love, and just get an overview of what's happening in
mm,
your space. And then the second thing I say is to look into doing research about what's happening in the world for the time span that you're planning for, whether it's next week or next month. So I like going
mm.
to this website called nationaltoday.com, and it
Oh,
literally
yeah.
lists every random social media holiday or actual holiday, or like when the Grammys and Coachella are happening. It just gives you all of that. And I think a lot of the time when people hear that, they think, oh, I'm just going to make a post like Happy Margarita Day. But it's more than that, right? It's more about understanding, like, what are the things that might be taking someone's attention right now? And should I lean into that, or should I know, okay, Easter's coming up, so people are going to be less on social media. So maybe don't promote anything during that week, or just keep posts
Mm,
about engaging people, because they just don't really want to read anything long. They just want to engage in something fun. So looking and researching all of that, seeing if there's industry events that are happening, like anything that you can use for to either give you content inspiration or know, post more during this time or post less during this time. I think that's an important step. And then from there is when you just, get creative. This is the part that everyone hates, right? They're like, I have to come up
mm.
with ideas. I don't know. But usually, if you just look at common questions you get asked in your comments or DMs, or look and see what people are asking under your competitors' content, or go on Reddit or Facebook groups. Just look to see what people are talking about, what they're interested in, and make content to address that is the third part. And then I think next is creating your content cadence. So everyone's content cadence may be different. Like maybe you we'll sit down for 2 hours once a month and batch out a bunch of videos, or maybe you'll do it once a week and you'll just record one or two videos.
Mm,
So you want to
mm,
have a cadence for how you're creating your content. Are you going to sit down in one sitting and do everything, or are you going to do graphics on one day
mm,
and captions on the other day? So just figure out how your flow is, and what type of flow you need to create content, and then from there you can just post it and schedule it. But I think the hardest
mm.
part for people is the ideas and the actual creation, because that creation part is like a whole class. So,
Oh my God. The creation part, right. And I loved everything you said because it's like really holistically looking at all the things. Because Instagram will give you metrics, right? And heck, you could even go through your reels and see which ones got more likes than others. And that all kind of tells a story about your content, right? And so let's say people take the time, because I think sometimes people don't want to take the time to do that type of stuff, right? Like I remember back in the day, I used to do like web design stuff, which I don't do anymore because it was just such a pain. I just remember telling people like, oh my God, Google Analytics is free. And you can find out so much information from that, right? But then people would put it on their website, but never look at the analytics. And I'm like, it would tell you what your top pages are, how much time people are lingering on those pages. And I feel like from that, there's so much you could do. So let's say if someone does take the time to do the homework and do everything you just laid out, then, it's, what you said at the end, which is creating and executing. So for you, do you either analog or digital, like plan out on a calendar, like reel on Tuesday, static image Thursday? What does that look like for you in order to hold you accountable?
yeah. So when I'm doing it for myself, it's different from when I do it for my clients. When I do it for my clients, I'm very detailed. So I will have every piece of detailed information that has to go into a post because I have a team that helps me to create the content, right? So they need to know this is what's in my brain,
Mm,
make this a carousel, put these exact words, use these colors. But when I do it for myself, what helps me is just to have just a little topic, right? So I'll just
mm-hmm.
go into like Airtable. I'm also very inconsistent in my process, to be honest with you, because sometimes I'm in Airtable, sometimes I have this physical content planner. You guys can't see me, but behind me is my whiteboard content planner that I created. So it depends on the month and what works for whatever, wherever my mind is. But for me, it's like the topic. So it's like I want to talk about creating a content plan that day. And
Mm.
when the week is coming up, I'll be like, oh, I feel like making a reel, or I'm like, I'll just make a carousel, or I'm gonna make a meme because that's easiest and I'm just in a goofy mood. And I think it just gives me that flexibility that some people need. Like some people need that rigidity of being like, this is a plan, this is exactly we're doing a reel and we're doing this. But other people, especially people who are like finicky like me, because I'm all creative. So I'm like, oh, I thought of that last week, but I don't want to do that anymore. I'm just
Right.
like, just give me the topic and then I'll try to think about it and I'll be like, oh, okay, well, today I feel like doing this. So that's what I'll go for. So
Mm.
for me, just having a general idea and then mapping out some of the main points that I want to convey. And then I'll just allow myself when I'm in content creation mode to just see what creatively inspires me. And that works well for me. So I would say for people who find themselves planning and then by the time it's time to execute the plan, you're like, I hate all of this, just map out today I'm going to talk about this thing and I'm talking about this to promote this thing and these are my points. Then that way you can just let your creativity connect back to that goal.
For me, I'm like, just kind of go where the wind takes me.
Hmm. Sometimes.
But what I do try to do is I'm doing stuff, I'll try to just record stuff or take pictures. So
Hmm.
then I'm like, I may use this one day. Right.
Hmm.
But even with that, it's so funny because I'm usually a productivity person and I try to be super organized about certain things. But with that stuff, I'm not organized at all. It is literally like whatever inspires me. And I'm like, I don't even know why I don't put stuff in like little folders and stuff.
Yeah.
You more
100%.
organized where you like have a potential real video folder and like static image folder, or how did that work for you?
For myself, no. It's so funny. I do this so meticulously for my clients, but I feel like for myself, I don't do it that way. I feel like I'm very similar to you, where I'm just like, I'll just free flow it and I'll see what I feel. I'll do small things. So I do like maybe once a week, I have a time in my calendar that's just okay, like, little admin. So I'll take the videos I record and put them into a folder on my phone. But I try not to make it complicated because I know I
Mm,
don't have the time. I know I don't have
right.
the time to do all this elaborate stuff. So it's like, as long as I create, sometimes I'll just put it in my favorites folder because I'm at least I can just go in my favorites folder and I can find it. And is that the
Mm.
most organized way? No, but it's just giving me one less step to do. And sometimes I feel like that's all we need is make your life 10% easier each time you do something. And then
Mm.
eventually it'll add up, because in reality, I can tell you to do, and I used to do this all the time. I used to have these super long social media presentations telling people step by step exactly what to do, and they would never do it. They just would never, because we're business owners and we have 5 million things to worry about. And although we know social media is important, it's never important enough to
Mm-hmm.
take us away from the thing that's making the money. So I feel like it's just make sure it's not a chaotic hot mess that it makes you hate it. Just make the small effort. And if the small effort you can make is when you record a video, just hitting the heart so it goes in your favorites folder, that's okay. And then just build from there.
No, I love that. And then I love how you said, like, even having a cadence, for example. Like, for me, because time is a factor, I'm like, okay, I can only commit to posting twice a week.
I
Like,
feel that.
once I'm promoting, like, the podcast episode. And then the
Hmm.
other, I try to do a random post from my reel that I think will connect with people. And if I'm like really going crazy, I might create a third. But usually you're going to get two a week.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting because I would love to hear your thoughts on this, is because I'm mostly on Instagram and I hate Facebook, I'm not really on Twitter. I use like CoSchedule, and I have it just put my stuff on LinkedIn, Twitter, and it's like in this pool, and it just continues to push out content from like a
Yeah.
bucket. So it looks
Yeah.
like I'm posting all the time. No, people, it's a bot. It is a bot.
I feel you. However, it gotta get done.
But kind of, what is your thoughts on that? Because, like, even for me now, I'm just like, oh, I probably need to go through that, freshen that up. But I'm like, it's just, I feel like that's the only way I can be in all the places, even though, of course, I think guidance that you're always given is like, just really focus on one thing. But I'm like, but
Yeah.
I just want to be visible a little bit in all the
I feel
places.
you. I totally feel you. I think that's everyone's sentiment right now, especially with Instagram being so difficult to grow on and engagement just being
Yeah.
so sucky for us all. Everyone is trying to figure out, I don't want to completely leave Instagram, but I want to be in all the places and maybe like strike gold somewhere that I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
expecting, and then I'll know. So I think it's okay to be in multiple places, but I think there just should be some intentionality, which is going to cost a little bit more time, but I think it's worth it. So, for example, if you're posting to Instagram and Twitter and all these places, I know Canva has a feature where you can just tell it to give you a graphic you create in all of the different sizes for each platform. So, taking the time to change the thing to the size that works best for that platform, taking the
Mm.
time to read your copy, because on Instagram, you're going to say link in bio. On LinkedIn, you can have a link. Just taking the time. On Twitter, I've noticed that when you share like a carousel on Twitter, it doesn't show the same, it doesn't give the same experience. So for me, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, let me just use the first page and then pull my most compelling quote and make that a tweet or turn that into a thread. So it's kind of just
Mm.
about, to me, something I've been loving is create the content first and then figure out how to disperse it later. Just think about, okay, on Twitter, people like punchy quotes that just
Mm-hmm.
say something concisely and then they want to share that. And then on LinkedIn, people want this. So it's just, here's the content I've created and here's how this will work on this platform. I think that's a good middle ground, because I do get it. Being on as many platforms as possible isn't a bad thing if you can figure out how to take the content you're creating and just flip
Mm.
it to me. So I don't think that what you're doing is wrong. I think it makes sense. And I think by the end of the year, we all gonna be doing something like that in some way, shape, or form, if
Right.
we're not already.
So what's your favorite platform, social media platform? If
I
you
used
had
to be
to
on
rank your
Instagram
like top
more.
three.
Okay, I love Instagram. Instagram is just my girl. I'm just a visual person and I like seeing beautifully curated content and I love learning. I know we don't consider YouTube social media all the time, but I love YouTube. I just
Mm.
like it's just to me the second best thing to TV, and I just really love it. And then I also have, in terms of consumption, I love TikTok. Like,
Mm,
I
mhm.
recently got into TikTok, and now I be scrolling on there all the time. I don't like creating for TikTok though. When it comes to creating, my list is different. It would be like Instagram, Twitter, and then I've actually been liking LinkedIn. Shocked at
Mm.
myself. Shocking, but it's so good for networking. Like I go on there and I'll just scroll for 30 minutes and like leave some comments and then I'll just post, hey, I just did this thing. And everyone's like, oh, that's awesome. And I'm like, wow, this is easier than Instagram where I got to create a whole damn creative concept, put production. So yeah, I have different lists for each.
And each one is so different because I like LinkedIn. I feel like it's so tricky because some I'll have Coach Schedule like repost my stuff there, but I'm like I feel like it doesn't get as much love because I'm LinkedIn is looking for you to tell a story, right? Like oh my
Mm-hmm.
goodness, today I just won a client or got 2 new clients, and everybody's oh my god, that's so great, or like
Yeah.
here's my new
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
project, right? Versus something like an image you would put on Instagram. So it's like you have to like think different, and in Twitter, right, it's just kind of like the words. It's interesting, which is why
It's
I
a
guess it is
lot.
good to get laser focused on at least one or two. And then,
Mm-hmm.
for Instagram, for you, what advice would you give people who are trying to find their style? Because I feel like on Instagram you have the people who are kind of almost repurposing the stuff from TikTok, right? And using, cause everything on TikTok just goes to Instagram. I'm like, Instagram, you got to get with it
Mm-hmm.
because people are just, this is
Mm-hmm.
just becoming another TikTok. But you have people that are like dancing or just like pointing to words. And then you have
Mm-hmm.
people who are basically taking like screen captures of what they tweeted, and those seem to be wildly popular, which I never
They are so
understand.
popular, and
Isn't
I
it?
don't
Like,
know
why
why
are they so
either.
popular?
I don't know, but every time I do one for myself or my clients, it performs exceptional.
People love them. And I'm just like, but it's literally, you guys, it's like a screenshot. And
Exactly.
right? Because you could do a graphic with the same words, but it will not perform well as the screenshot.
I think it's just clear, simple, straight to the point, no fluff, and I feel like people just live for that sometimes. They just want the just give it to me. Just give it to me, no chaser.
Yeah, I think people are like, what should I do? Like, how do I find my style? Because maybe my style is being goofy or just being a talking head, but it looks like dancing or Twitter images is what gets the likes. Do I need to do that versus something that comes more easy to me, like a talking head or creating graphics or whatever? So, any advice for
Yeah.
people?
I always say that it's always about what your best communication style is. I think that should always be the number one priority and focus because if you don't like creating the content, if it doesn't feel inherent to you and it feels challenging, you're just going to stop. And it
Right,
has to be
right.
just about almost, it has to be just as much about you as it is about your audience. And so I will always say, what is your communication style in life? Are you the type of person to pick up the phone and talk and call someone? Or are you someone that's going to send a text message? Or are you the person that's going to send a quick voice message? What is your communication style? Are you a writer? Is that one of your strongest skills? Like people always say how prolific you are. Whatever your strongest skill set is, create content within that realm. The great thing about Instagram is that you can create pretty much any type of content. And most people think of that as a challenge, but I think it's an opportunity because you don't have to
Mm.
do all of them. You just got to do the one that works for you.
Yeah,
There are
yeah.
people on Instagram who, like you said, all they post is Twitter threads or all they post is dancing videos. So
Yeah.
whatever your thing is where you feel comfortable, do it. I remember this one girl I was following. It looks like she would literally just turn her camera on and have a mic in front of her and just ramble. And then she would just take them and cut them into clips. I guess she would find the things she said that was like, ooh, and then she would post that clip and it would do well. And I'm
Mm.
sure she was literally just sitting here. And another thing, this, and that. And then she took it and just would share it. So, whatever is your style of communication in life, how you best communicate with your people in life, use that as your communication style on social media. And I feel like it would it would make everything better.
And then folks are going to be like, but how are people going to see me? Do I need to use hashtags? Do I need to comment? Like, how do I get people to see my content?
It's so ironic. I feel like the thing that is so funny about social media is most of the time when you're in those building and growing phases, the best way to grow is off social media. The best way to grow is to be on people's podcasts, to go to events,
Yeah.
to connect with people directly. And then the first thing they're going to be like, what's your Instagram? You're building people who they like you, they know you. So what are they going to do? They're going to share your content. And then someone's going to go to your page, they're going to see it and be like, oh, and then they're going to follow you. And I feel like that's the cycle, is like focus less on trying to beat the algorithm and more on making connections with people. If you see someone you admire or someone who's cool, who, just DM them and build relationships. Take the time like we did. We connected and now we both got an extra follower out of it, but we also got a meaningful connection that could lead to collaborations and other things. So I think when you're in those early stage, every human counts, every person counts, and the better engaged you are with them, the more invested they'll be, and they will be your ambassadors and they will help you grow. So it's going to be a slow race, but focus more on how many of your followers, if you have 100, how many of them could you say like you had a nice little conversation with? And if it's none, because you're just like, oh, that's just 100 people, I'm trying to get those 100 people over there, then you need to focus back on your 100 people that already are riding with you. Don't be ignoring them. That's rude.
Yeah. I will say, I think people underestimate the power of like connection, because there are plenty of people, like I was at Craftcation in 2019, right? And I connected with so many people, and one is Monique Malcolm, who's been on the podcast before. She just wrote like this fear guide and it's amazing. And it's like, we always push each other. We're telling other people about each other. And then just because I have a podcast, sometimes people will come to me and they're like, do you know any good designers? Do you know any good social media managers? Do you know any good artists? And because I've made that connection outside of social media, then of course connected on social media, then now randomly I'm going to be like, oh yeah, you looking for a social media manager? Well, I just interviewed someone named Gabby and she seems like she is amazing. She even spoke at the Craftcation conference. And like all of a sudden that connection, right, leads to more business. And so I think it is important that people like just don't solely rely on like getting followers through hashtags. Right, but actually building relationships, because you literally never know what that can lead to.
Yeah, those relationships are the things that have really pushed my business. And for me, I think social media is more like in those early stages, like a validator. It's okay,
Yeah.
you exist, you're an actual person, you're real, you're legit. It's almost like without the actual blue check mark, it's a blue check mark on you being a legitimate person that exists.
Right.
But yeah, those connections, that's ultimately what social media is. It's connection with other humans. And those people could be your mentors, your customers, your clients. Like you don't know where that relationship's going to go, but the relationship is what matters. It could be your people who refer you to other people. So that I agree 100%. Connections are everything.
They are. And there have been people that have found me on Instagram, and then we connected through DMing and chatting over time. And it's, girl, you're in my city. You want to go for like, you know what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden you've built this relationship, and then you have someone where you could be like, okay, well, I'm going through this and struggling with this part of my business or whatever. What do you do? And you know what I'm saying? But it is, oh my goodness, the power of connection is real, people.
I would not have made it here if it wasn't for the connections. I've made so many close friends through social media, especially like moving from the East Coast to the West Coast and leaving my entire network behind. It's like social media has been integral to me being able to be where I am today and having the community of entrepreneurs, so I can be like, hey, how do you do this? Or have you been having a hard time with that?
It's real, people. Get on it. Okay, so a couple of wrap-up questions. How do you stay organized? Any tools, software, or techniques you want to share?
Yes. Okay. So I've been getting into Notion, and I know that's your vibe, your jam, and you would probably be embarrassed by my Notion base, but I've been liking Notion for like big picture and just knowing what's happening in my life. But I recently also went back to physical planners,
Mm,
and I just bought a bunch of color coded pens. So I'm just like color coding things and just going old school because I find that just writing things out just helps them to stick to my brain and really keeps me organized. So a balance of Notion and a planner.
mm. I am all for it. Everybody knows in this podcast, I am analog and digital. I am highly addicted to Notion. I even got Notion widgets on my phone. Like I'm going to use
Okay.
them to open up my little plant page so I can water my plants tonight and check off which ones I
Mhm.
water. But there is something about writing things down. So I like to use my planner or even my bullet journal to just kind of write things out. And then from there, whatever makes sense, put it into Notion. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's like a combination of two, which might feel overwhelming to people, but you kind of know which what you're
Mhm.
using each one for. So it as you create your system, it's not as complicated, I guess, as it sounds. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. It's really a game changer to have both. And I'm coming to your workshop on Notion because I don't fully know what Notion widgets are, but I need to do whatever you're talking about. So I will be at that panel. So I'll see you
Woohoo! I
there.
will convert her, you guys. She will be a
Yes.
Notion fan.
Okay, I'm down.
And then, question: do you have a hobby? I'm assuming you do because you come in a craftcation.
Yes. Okay, so as much as I aspire to be a crafter, it's like in my inside, I would say that my hobbies are like reading,
Mm.
watching movies way too analytically. Like I watch movies like I am a film director because my wife works in film. So we'll like
Be
we
like,
have like these exactly. We literally have a workbook, like a film workbook, and we'll do like worksheets and then we'll watch a movie and be like, oh, that's the character flaw. Here's
oh,
the arc, the
oh, that's
story arc.
hardcore.
Right, we're, like, very intense, so I love that. It's fun, though, it's, like, really fun.
Look, at first I thought you were talking about like, oh, it seems like maybe there's a green screen they're using. Woo, did you see the wig on that character?
We do that too, we be like, "Ooh, I can see the mic was peeking in for a second, they gotta fix that." We do it all, but that's very
But
fun.
y'all getting into the script. Yo.
Yes, we'd be like storyline, plot, character development, like, we go in, but it's fun, it's like it's like, as a creative, I'm always just like, "How do creatives work, and how do they think, and how can I apply that?" So, I just, like, love doing that.
And then putting you on the spot a little bit, but let me know if something comes to mind. Book recommendation.
Oh, okay. Oh, I read 2 really good books
Mm,
lately. So the first one is called The Overground Railroad, and it's a book
mm,
about the Green Book, which was this travel guide for Black people during Reconstruction that helped them to know like what businesses were safe for them to stop at, what restaurants and hotels they can go to during a time when we were not allowed to go to most businesses in the country. And that book was it was sad at first, just
mm.
hearing the reality, but as I got into it, it was like, wow, it's so inspiring how many entrepreneurs were built from that and how we don't give up. That's
No.
one thing about Black people. Okay, we gonna make a way and find a way. So that book is good. And then also The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson. And that's a book
Mm,
about the Great Migration of Black people from the South to the North. And it has like different stories and it just tells you about like how we all ended up where we are. So those are 2 really good
mm.
books that I would recommend. Really into my Black history bag right now, so all my books are like Black history.
Yeah. Yeah. I will definitely put those in the show notes. Like I'm always
Yeah.
looking for good books and it was
Mhm.
funny just to others this month I was telling them about the book How the Word is Passed. I love that book. I think
Mhm.
it's Clint Smith might be the author and that's also a really good one and there's another one too that is escaping my mind that I thought was really
Send me
good.
those, please, because 'cause I'm looking for new
Yeah.
books to read.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely I will add those to the show notes. And then last question is please let the listeners know where they can find you, where they can hire you, where you are on social
Mhm.
media, all the things.
Okay, so you can follow me on Instagram at Strut Social with Gabby. And actually, this is a perfect time to be on this amazing show because I'm launching my membership, the Strut Social Society, this month. And it's
Ooh.
essentially a social media membership for entrepreneurs who are still in that phase where they're doing their own socials. And you'll pretty much get a plug and play content plan for each month with all those timely topics and all those things we talked about today, as
Mm.
well as co-content planning and co-content creation sessions where you can have my brain and you can just ask me things and we can work through your content together. So it's a nice hybrid between doing it yourself and having that support and that guidance to guide you along. So I can send you the link to that if you want to add it to the show notes.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, Gabby, you have inspired me to step up my game, my
I
social
love
media
that.
game.
Yes.
Get just a little bit more organized.
Yeah, a little bit by bit. You're already a Notion queen, so it's gonna be a easier transition than you think.
I just gotta commit. It's like once I put it in Notion, just actually like execute.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm always here. If you need an accountability buddy, just hit me up.
But no, thanks for coming on the podcast and really appreciate you sharing like your stories and all the tips.
Yes, this was an amazing conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Well, my friends, I hope you guys enjoyed that episode as much as I enjoyed talking to her. I cannot wait to connect with her at Craftcation. Monique Malcolm is also going to be there. So, oh my goodness, with all the bosses just sucking up all their positivity, their energy, their knowledge, I literally can't wait. Plus, we're going to be crafting. I am going to be in heaven at Craftcation. I cannot wait. Anywho, remember that we mentioned a lot of things. There were a lot of books at the end, you name it. I have all of that linked over in the show notes, nachesnow.com/167. Remember, over there, you can also sign up for the newsletter. She mentioned Notion. You could go over to my blog and you can get my free Notion template. If you're already in Notion, I have a paid travel template that I absolutely love, and other people have given me kudos on its creation too. But everything you need, my friends, is over at nachesnow.com. So sign up for the newsletter, get the free templates, the paid templates, get the links, get all the things. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed this and you are feeling inspired and ready to create a strategy for your social media. And with that, my friends, you know the drill. If you haven't already, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and rate me 5 stars. It helps people find the podcast. You leave a comment, that's even better. It makes me feel so good. If you're over on YouTube listening, please give me a thumbs up. And of course, wherever you're listening, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, you name it, please subscribe. That also helps other women find the podcast and get inspired by these amazing women who have shared their extraordinary stories. Well, that's it, folks. I will chat with you guys next week. Bye.